Welcome to this explainer. Okay, quick question for you. Did you know that the vast majority of massive multi-state food recalls actually don't start with a broken machine, but with a broken conversation? It's true. As focused learners, we tend to think of communication as, well, just talking, right? Sending off a quick email, sitting through a meeting, exchanging a few words in the hallway. But in reality, communication is this incredibly rigid, highly intricate structural system. It's basically the invisible architecture that determines whether a business sinks or swims. And, as we're going to see today, it's the exact mechanism that literally keeps the food on our plates safe to eat. So today, we are taking a really fascinating look into the anatomy of communication within the food industry.
All right, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. First up, decoding the communication model, then navigating the fault lines. After that, we'll look at communication as business strategy, and finally, the stakes, food safety. So kicking things off with section 1, decoding the communication model. To really grasp this, we need to pop the hood for a second and understand exactly what is happening when a piece of information goes from point A to point B. Let's define the basic building blocks. First, we have the sender. Let's say a farmer checking the temperature of their crops. Then we have the message, which is the actual raw data being shared. The channel is the medium they use, maybe a digital compliance portal on a tablet. And finally, the receiver. This might be a regional distributor who gets that message, decodes it, and ideally provides some feedback. Think of this flow kind of like a physical food supply chain. Just like a super fragile pallet of fresh strawberries, a single message can easily get lost, delayed, or just entirely spoiled in transit if the infrastructure isn't rock solid. And this perfectly illustrates that exact physical pathway. It's a continuous loop. The sender puts in the effort to encode a thought into a message, shoots it across to the receiver to decode, and then they shoot back feedback. But oh, take a look at that orange bubble right at the bottom. Noise. This is the constant, always looming threat of disruption in our system. Literally any interference that corrupts the message along this pathway is considered noise. And in a high-stakes environment like the food industry, a corrupted message is a massive, massive liability. Moving right along to section 2, navigating the fault lines. So when this perfectly designed, on-paper system hits actual real-world friction, we really have to ask ourselves a high-stakes question. Where does the system actually break down? If communication is basically the supply chain of our ideas, what are the organizational fault lines that derail our messages and throw our businesses off track? Well, we can distinctly separate these roadblocks into two main buckets. Over on one side, we have interpersonal barriers. This is your classic human error at the individual level. Things like someone's totally unique interpretation of a specific word, or frankly, just their fundamental inability to actively listen. But then on the flip side, we have organizational barriers. These are deep systemic flaws baked right into the company's architecture. We're talking about things like massive information overload paralyzing a whole team, or a really clunky, inefficient corporate structure that just acts as a giant bottleneck. To make this super concrete, let's just trace where these actually come from. On the interpersonal side, a barrier might look like a line worker completely mistranslating a manager's hand gesture from across a super noisy factory floor. It's a simple human misunderstanding. But compare that with the organizational side. Here, the communication gets completely blocked because an overloaded compliance portal crashed the whole system. Or a logistics team is totally paralyzed by information overload. You might even have active conflicts between two completely separate corporate divisions. And a structural bottleneck like that, it requires a fundamentally different fix than just sorting out a simple interpersonal misunderstanding. Which brings us to section 3, communication as business strategy. Now, you might be wondering, why do we even care about fixing these barriers so much? Well, because mastering this blueprint and stamping out those fault lines isn't just about making people play nice at work. It directly translates into actual, hard business operations and revenue. For businesses in the food sector, having an effective communication system is the absolute foundation for making big strategic decisions. It guides your market strategy, which directly bumps up revenue. It improves internal organizational structure, completely supercharging productivity, and crucially, it aids in the implementation of innovations. I mean, you literally cannot roll out a complex, cost-reducing piece of tech if you can't clearly communicate exactly how it works to your own staff, right? And hey, this strategic communication pushes outward to the consumer too. Food industry businesses follow 4 vital steps here. Step 1, defining the customer groups. Step 2, and this one is absolutely critical, explaining consumer behavior through really effective messaging. Step 3 is conducting detailed customer segmentation. And finally, step 4, identifying the precise driving factors behind why a customer reaches for one product over another. Pulling off those highly targeted marketing strategies relies 100% on clear communication channels. If a food brand misinterprets consumer feedback, like if they fail to perfectly decode the needs of these groups, they are going to lose market share. Simple as that. The organizational communication system is the literal tool they use to gather and make sense of all this vital market data.
All right, on to section 4, the stakes, food safety. Listen, this goes so far beyond just revenue and marketing campaigns. This is where theoretical architecture gets applied to a literal life or death reality. The source material states this very clearly, calling effective communication systems the backbone of success for the food industry. I really want you to internalize that phrase. We are not just talking about firing off memos and sending an email to coordinate a Tuesday lunch break. We are talking about the structural integrity of the food we actually eat. This backbone holds up some massive foundational operations. Yes, it absolutely covers brand messaging and customer engagement, but look a little deeper into the core of the business: supply chain management, employee training, and above all else, food safety and quality assurance. I want to pause here just to emphasize this. Having effective communication around supply chain logistics and quality assurance is strictly 100% non-negotiable. So the really crucial point here is how strategically integrated this whole shebang is. From consumer-facing marketing over to global supply chain logistics, all the way down to the physical product sitting on your dinner plate, communication is the glue. It is the literal mechanism that maintains these insanely complex global logistics, and most importantly, it safeguards public health. Let's get down to brass tacks and look at the real-world mechanics of this. How does communication actually keep our food safe? Well, it ensures strict hygiene protocols are actually understood by the staff, which overcomes that individual interpretation barrier we talked about earlier. It clarifies handling procedures across a bunch of diverse teams. It ensures everybody is up to speed on super rigid compliance standards. And probably most critically, it allows for the lightning-fast coordination of rapid product recalls. Just imagine the absolute nightmare of experiencing information overload or organizational distortion right in the middle of a massive contamination event. Avoiding those specific barriers is exactly what prevents localized issues from exploding into widespread health crisis. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. But before you go, I want to leave you with a quick thought to ponder. We've seen just how vital this structure is for the food industry. But take a look around your own environment. What invisible communication barriers, those interpersonal misunderstandings or structural bottlenecks, are currently risking the success of your workplace's own supply chain? Keep an eye on how information flows around you this week. Honestly, you might be surprised by the fault lines you find. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.